Blake Lively alludes to her battles with Justin Baldoni while paying tribute to her mother. The It Ends With Us star, who was honored April 24th at Time's Most Influential People Gala and is currently embroiled in a contentious legal battle with her co-star and director Justin Baldoni.
Okay, so Justin Baldoni is suing Disney. I swear to you, the situation gets crazier by the day. Let's get into it. In the movie Deadpool and Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds plays Nicepool, a feminist bun-wearing man that's a little bit problematic.
Plantation Princess's shocking speech at the Time 100 party. If you missed it, Sexual Harassment Barbie revealed then that her mother was assaulted by a former co-worker and nearly died
during the ceremony about trauma in women standing up for themselves. Blake, who never mentions Justin by name or her allegations of sexual harassment against him, alludes to her litigation against him after reflecting on influence is a, quote, significant responsibility to hold.
The Nepo baby's mother is a victim of violence, and many people did not take very favorably to her speech.
But somebody else who is very connected to this reached out and said, Candace, you're 90% there. You're just missing one thing. And I'm beginning to wonder, and listen, full speculation, no proof, for him to go that crazy.
So much more evidence has come forward from even Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively themselves that all but confirms that, yes, Ryan used his Nicepool character in Deadpool and Wolverine to mock Justin Baldoni.
And it was especially insulting because last summer, when the Woody Allen apologist and former friend of Harvey Weinstein was promoting her movie, It Ends With Us, a film about DV, she didn't talk about DV.
She says, quote, who and what we stand up for and what we stay silent about, what we monetize versus what we actually live, matters.
Hello and welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemens, and why the fuck is Nicepool from Deadpool and Wolverine being sued? Recently, the internet has been subject to this ongoing legal battle between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively for what feels like months now.
Deadpool took part in a More to Parkinson's panel and was asked afterwards about Delulu's speech. He said, I'm incredibly in awe of my wife in many ways.
But in here, everybody calls me Nicepool. Oh my goodness, wait till you see Ladypool. She is gorgeous. She just had a baby too, and can't even tell. I don't think you're supposed to say that. That's okay. I identify as a feminist.
What if a petty Hollywood feud could accidentally spoil Marvel's entire next phase? What if one snarky character cameo, barely on screen, ends up dragging the most secretive studio on Earth into a $400 million courtroom brawl? Yeah, that's exactly what's happening right now. Marvel Studios just made a desperate plea to a federal judge, begging to be pulled out of the escalating legal war between actor Justin Baldoni and the Hollywood power couple Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Why? Because Baldoni's legal team isn't just going after people. They're going after Nicepool, a satirical character from Deadpool and Wolverine that's now at the center of one of the messiest, most personal lawsuits in recent entertainment history. And here's where it gets wild. Marvel says that if they're forced to hand over internal documents about how that character was created, it could leak plotlines, crossovers, and even future MCU character arcs. All the stuff the studio guards like Fort Knox. This isn't just legal drama. It's franchise-level fallout. All of this started when Justin Baldoni, best known for Jane the Virgin and directing It Ends With Us, filed a $400 million countersuit after being accused of harassment by Blake Lively during filming.
Less than 12 hours after Justin filed, Blake's legal team doubled down, calling the bombshell $400 million lawsuit another chapter in the abuser playbook.
But Baldoni claims he's the real victim. And the smoking gun? He says it's that weird, slick-haired parody mercenary named Nicepool, who supposedly looks like him, talks like him, and was designed specifically to humiliate him. Now Marvel's caught in the blast radius, scrambling to convince the court that giving Baldoni access to their creative files would basically set off an MCU spoiler bomb. They're calling it the highest level of confidentiality. But here's the real question. Was this just a Deadpool joke taken too far? Or was Nicepool Hollywood's most savage subtweet? And what happens if the judge says no? Because if Marvel loses this motion, Phase 7 may not begin on a red carpet. It might start on the witness stand. No warning, no press leaks, just a blink and you miss it moment in a Deadpool and Wolverine teaser, and suddenly all hell broke loose. In between the meta jokes, multiverse mayhem, and Hugh Jackman's glorious return, one oddball character slid into frame, a man-bun-wearing merc with smug energy and a bizarre vendetta against, get this, intimacy coordinators and post-baby bodies. His name? Nicepool.
Brian Friedman has sent a litigation hold letter to Marvel president Kevin Feige, Disney CEO Bob Iger, and Deadpool 1 director Tim Miller. But why? Because Baldoni's lawyer believes that Blake Lively's husband, Ryan Reynolds, mocked Baldoni in the character Nicepool.
At first, fans thought it was just another Deadpool parody. The franchise has always poked fun at Hollywood cliches, from superhero tropes to tabloid gossip. But something about this character felt different, too specific, too personal. And then, the internet did what it does best: connect the dots. Within hours, fan forums and TikTok threads were buzzing. Is this guy supposed to be Justin Baldoni? Suddenly, old clips of Baldoni talking about on-set ethics resurfaced. His TED Talk on modern masculinity started circulating again. People pulled side-by-side photos. Nicepool's man bun, beard, even mannerisms seemed eerily close to Baldoni's public persona. And then came the allegations. Baldoni's lawyers claimed the character wasn't just a punchline. It was a hit job, a high-budget insult dropped into the middle of a billion-dollar franchise.
I guess it was a deleted clip in the film. Way too specific, 100% meant to be a giant FU to Justin. Here's a clip from the film that didn't make the cut.
Yeah, but merc to merc, they're crazy. They will chop you up into 1,000 pieces and hide you all over the void.
According to court documents, they believe the character was created as a form of creative retaliation after Blake Lively accused Baldoni of misconduct during the filming of It Ends With Us. In other words, Baldoni says he was mocked, branded, and buried in Hollywood's most memeable movie, and now he wants the studio to pay up. And if the claim sounds outlandish, here's the kicker. Marvel hasn't denied that Nicepool was inspired by real people. Instead, they're fighting to hide the documents that explain how the character was conceived. Was it satire? Was it sabotage? Or was it something more calculated, camouflaged behind Deadpool's mask of chaos? Whatever the answer is, the fuse was lit with one smirk, one line of dialogue, and it's now burning straight toward the Marvel vault. The irony, this entire $400 million nightmare started on the set of a feel-good romance film. In late 2024, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni began filming It Ends With Us, a high-profile adaptation of Colleen Hoover's viral novel.
I'd be fighting alongside them, but my calling is to one day host a podcast that monetizes the women's movement. Hey, cowboy, my eyes are up here. I know it's tempting. I look at it too sometimes. Yeah.
Jeez. I mean, so specific.
The project had all the right ingredients: a passionate fan base, a powerhouse cast, and Baldoni pulling double duty as director and star. But behind the scenes, things were already unraveling. That December, Blake Lively filed a formal complaint with California's Civil Rights Department. Her claim: on-set harassment and retaliation at the hands of Baldoni. The details haven't been publicly disclosed, but sources close to the production say tensions were sky high. What was supposed to be a swoon-worthy romance quickly became a legal powder keg. And Baldoni, he didn't just deny the allegations, he came back swinging. In one of the most aggressive Hollywood countersuits in recent memory, he filed a $400 million defamation and civil extortion claim against Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and their longtime publicist, Leslie Sloan. His argument? That the harassment accusations were weaponized not only in legal filings, but also through entertainment. He claims the team deliberately crafted the Nicepool character to mock him, destroy his image, and tank his credibility just as the industry was starting to view him as a serious director and progressive voice. Baldoni's legal filing calls it a coordinated campaign of reputational assassination, cleverly disguised as satire. And that's what makes this case so explosive. Not just the personal drama, but the blurry lines it exposes between Hollywood storytelling and real-world vendettas.
This just feels too jokey. Like, shouldn't it be taken more seriously? I'm really bummed by this.
In the span of weeks, a book adaptation turned into a battlefield. What was supposed to launch Baldoni's directorial credibility may now become the very project that forces Disney, Marvel, and multiple A-listers into the witness box. And right in the middle of it all sits Nicepool, a character that was supposed to be funny, edgy, maybe even forgettable, until someone got subpoenaed. For most people, a movie character with a man bun wouldn't trigger a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. But Justin Baldoni isn't most people, and Nicepool isn't your average side character. Baldoni's legal team is betting everything on one bold strategy: prove that Nicepool wasn't just another Deadpool gag, but a targeted takedown. In court documents, Baldoni's lawyers argue that this character was a calculated insult, one designed with specific and malicious intent to mock his identity, values, and public reputation. They allege that Reynolds, Lively, and their longtime publicist Leslie Sloan didn't just pull off a petty joke, they coordinated a cinematic hit job. And the proof? Baldoni wants Marvel's internal communications. All of them. Emails, memos, text messages between producers, character concept drafts, notes from writers' rooms, anything that might show when Nicepool was created, who approved the idea, and whether anyone ever mentioned Baldoni's name.
Justin Baldoni demands Marvel preserve all documents relating to Ryan Reynolds' Nicepool amid legal battle. Again, this is a litigation hold letter. This is a letter sent by the lawyer to anyone involved in the case.
And that's the nightmare scenario for Marvel. Because in this business, the creative process is sacred. It's chaotic, messy, full of brainstorms, rewrites, inside jokes, and confidential IP. Unsealing those documents wouldn't just hand Baldoni potential ammo for his case. It might accidentally expose future plotlines, character arcs, or crossover events that haven't even been teased in trailers. That's why Marvel is begging the judge to shut the whole thing down. Their April 25th motion calls the subpoena overly broad and unduly burdensome, warning that complying would compromise proprietary material that's considered among the studio's most valuable trade secrets. But Baldoni's team isn't backing off. In fact, they've accused Marvel of being uncooperative, saying the studio never made a serious attempt to negotiate before asking the court to quash the subpoena. Now it's a standoff. One side is demanding transparency in the name of justice,
as well as communications relating to the development, writing, and filming of storylines and scenes featuring Nicepool. The letter also calls for the studio to retain any and all documents relating to or reflecting a deliberate attempt to mock, harass, ridicule, intimidate, or bully Baldoni through the character of Nicepool.
The other is fighting to protect a billion-dollar franchise and a vault of unreleased content. And if the court rules in Baldoni's favor, Marvel may be forced to open the creative floodgates. Marvel doesn't beg often, but when it does, you know things have gone off the rails. On April 25th, Marvel Entertainment filed a formal request with Judge Louis J. Lyman in the Southern District of New York. Their mission? Get out. Fast. In legal terms, it's called a motion to quash a subpoena. But in plain English, Marvel is basically saying, please don't drag us into this circus. The studio's lawyers argue that complying with Baldoni's subpoena would not only be a massive overreach, it could literally ruin upcoming phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Their letter calls the materials the highest level of confidentiality. These aren't just behind-the-scenes notes. According to Marvel, the documents Baldoni's legal team is demanding contain internal emails about character creation, writer room memos on tone and parody draft scripts and design prototypes, and most dangerously, outlines for future crossovers and MCU storylines. Marvel's entire business model is built on secrecy. The slow burn reveals, the surprise cameos, the shocking post-credit scenes. If even a fraction of that roadmap leaks, the studio says the creative damage would be irreparable.
Marvel and Disney declined comment, as did the attorney for Reynolds and Lively, and Baldoni's lawyer Friedman could also not be reached for comment, as it's believed he might have been one of the many people whose home was affected by the Palisades fire.
And here's where it gets even more tangled. Marvel is also asking the court to delay any response to the subpoena until another issue gets sorted out. Ryan Reynolds' motion to dismiss Baldoni's counterclaims. Why? Because if Reynolds gets tossed from the case, Marvel might argue that the entire basis for targeting Nicepool collapses with him. This is no longer just a spat between celebrities, it's a high-stakes legal grenade with the potential to blow a hole in one of the most lucrative film franchises of all time. And behind the legalese and court filings, one truth remains. Marvel is scared. Not of Baldoni necessarily, but of what's buried in those creative files. Because if Nicepool really was more than just a joke, the fallout could cost more than just box office buzz. It could cost Marvel its mystique. Let's talk numbers, because behind all the celebrity gossip and memorable moments, this battle is really about two colossal figures: a $400 million lawsuit and the multi-billion-dollar value of Marvel's future. On one hand, you've got Justin Baldoni demanding nearly $500 million in damages. He's alleging defamation, emotional distress, and career sabotage via a so-called parody character that he says wasn't parody at all. It was personal. His legal team believes the Nicepool cameo was part of a broader retaliation strategy fueled by Reynolds, Lively, and publicist Leslie Sloan. On the other hand, you have Marvel Studios, guardians of the most tightly controlled story universe on the planet, saying they could lose everything that makes their brand magic if they're forced to open up the vault. Because here's what's really at stake. If the judge forces Marvel to comply and those internal documents leak, it won't just expose who really inspired Nicepool.
Uzi time, baby.
Look alive! In front of what looks like a flower shop. There's Justin. Blake getting her way to finally take out Justin, it seems. Look around all the branches and flower shops. Gift shops. I mean, really? I can't believe they resorted to this.
It might reveal which characters are about to be introduced, which stars are joining the next Avengers lineup, or how the X-Men crossover is finally going to unfold. Marvel has already hinted that the subpoena includes story assets tied to future phases of the MCU, and if even a piece of that leaks, it doesn't just spoil the surprise. It weakens the rollout, it undermines the build-up, and it could cost the studio hundreds of millions in marketing value and fan hype. But here's the kicker. Baldoni's lawyers say Marvel brought this on themselves. They claim that during a prior call in early April, Marvel refused to engage in any meaningful negotiation to narrow the request. No compromise, no filters, just a flat-out no, and then a desperate court filing. Now, both sides are digging in, and the judge is stuck balancing two explosive forces: Baldoni's demand for justice and Marvel's need to preserve secrecy at all costs. And if the court sides with Baldoni, we may be one document dump away from the biggest spoiler event in MCU history. What started as a legal clash between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively has now become a celebrity wildfire, with a growing list of A-listers caught in the blast radius. And the deeper this case goes, the messier it gets. First up, Ryan Reynolds, not just Blake's husband and the face of Deadpool, but also allegedly one of the architects of the Nicepool character. Baldoni's legal team claims Reynolds was directly involved in shaping the parody, and even suggest he greenlit lines meant to publicly mock Baldoni's values, reputation, and feminist branding. Reynolds has filed a motion to dismiss the countersuit, but until the court rules, he's squarely in the spotlight. Then there's Leslie Sloan, the high-powered publicist who's repped both Reynolds and Lively for years. She's named in the countersuit as part of the supposed smear campaign. According to Baldoni's lawyers, Sloan helped coordinate media narratives and may have had knowledge of Nicepool's true inspiration before the film even wrapped. But that's not all.
And as if that wasn't enough evidence, Blake Lively herself taunted and did it in the credits of the film. In It Ends With Us, Blake Lively wishes to extend special thanks to Bradley Cooper, a bunch of other people, Taylor Swift's in there, etc.
Sources say Taylor Swift, yes, the Taylor Swift, may be subpoenaed due to her close friendship with Blake and ongoing public connections to the Marvel crew. Swift was long rumored to have a surprise cameo in Deadpool and Wolverine, and if she was on set or in the creative loop, Baldoni's team might consider her a potential witness. And don't forget Hugh Jackman. As one of the film's leads and a longtime collaborator with Reynolds, Jackman could also be questioned about his knowledge of how Nicepool came to be and whether anyone ever mentioned Baldoni behind the scenes. In other words, this case has the potential to turn into a full-on Hollywood testimonial circus. Red carpets might be traded for courtroom benches, NDAs might crack under cross-examination, and even Marvel's most beloved icons could be forced to answer uncomfortable questions. Because when you parody the wrong person in the wrong way, the fallout doesn't stay fictional. This is where the case gets murky and dangerous for Hollywood creatives. The question at the center of it all isn't whether Nicepool is funny, it's whether he crossed the legal line from satire into defamation, and the answer could redefine how film studios use parody moving forward. Baldoni's argument hinges on the idea that Nicepool wasn't just a punchline, it was weaponized mockery, wrapped in Deadpool's signature sarcasm. He claims that the character intentionally mimics his appearance, voice, and activism to humiliate him publicly, especially after his clash with Blake Lively on the It Ends With Us set. But here's the thing, satire has long been protected under US law. The First Amendment gives writers and filmmakers broad leeway to parody real people. especially public figures.
Gordon Reynolds. Well, who's Gordon Reynolds? Oh, it must be like someone related to Ryan Reynolds, right? That's clearly just a Ryan Reynolds thing. Nope. Gordon Reynolds was the name that Ryan used to attribute who played Nicepool.
Shows like SNL, Family Guy, and yes, even South Park have made entire careers out of towing that line. So why is this different? Because this time, the alleged satire didn't come from some outsider. It came from people who were personally connected to a live legal feud. People who had motive. And if Baldoni's team can prove intent to harm, even a parody can lose its legal shield. That's why legal experts are paying attention. Some compare this case to the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard trial, where personal disputes spilled into public courtrooms and flipped media narratives overnight. Others say it's more like a defamation 2.0 case, one that mixes character assassination with studio-scale IP. And here's the scary part for Hollywood. If Baldoni wins, it could open the floodgates. Every cameo, character, or joke that even resembles a real person could face scrutiny. Studios may be forced to rethink how they write satire altogether, because what starts as a wink to the audience can quickly turn into a subpoena. And if the jury sides with Baldoni, satire may no longer be Hollywood's safest mask. Time's running out, and both sides know it. In the coming months, a series of court deadlines could decide the fate of Marvel's biggest secrets and Justin Baldoni's $400 million counterstrike. First up, a summer hearing to determine whether Ryan Reynolds stays in the case. If he's out, Marvel might wiggle free. If not, the studio could be forced to turn over highly classified internal files, scripts, crossover plans, and Phase 7 spoilers. Then comes Discovery, where everything must be revealed. And finally, March 2026, the jury trial that could pull the curtain back on the MCU in ways fans were never meant to see. Marvel's scrambling to avoid that future, but Baldoni's team isn't backing down. To them, Nicepool wasn't just a Deadpool side joke. It was public humiliation wrapped in a superhero suit. And now the courts have to decide, was it parody or was it punishment? This lawsuit isn't just about egos or on-set tension. It's about whether a billion-dollar franchise used its platform to settle personal scores, and what happens when that power gets called out in court. If Baldoni wins, studios everywhere might start second-guessing how they use satire, parody, even character design. And if Marvel loses, it won't just leak plotlines. It could change how Hollywood hides its drama behind punchlines. Because when a joke ends up in legal filings and a cameo threatens a cinematic universe, the fallout isn't just PR, it's precedent. And this might be the first time a post-credit gag costs more than the movie itself.